So I'm sitting in my house, and this video has to be made. Um, I found out that my life was a direction of the most important kind to mankind, and people are questioning. It just is, and I'm going to explain this through real quick. When I was 12 years old, and the people that need to follow through is National Geographic. They could get about 3 years worth of material. On the last one for April, the fungus thing. I have been a guinea pig for this fungus thing now for a long time. And then the other one on there is the Yurtis Observatory. Everything I've been working on has been towards telescopes, Galileo, star watching, whatever. So I'm going to go through this really quick. In case nobody remembers. When I was 12 years old, I was raking oak leaves for my grandfather because he took them down and he burned them in a pile down in the lower part, or he dumped them over the bank for compost, which there is a white mold that grows in the oak leaf compost. It also grows between wood piles and rots the wood. And when I was there doing that, a voice came to me. Yes, I am a seer. I do hear voices occasionally. I'm not crazy. So basically, a voice came to me and said, that is the cure for cancer, indicating the white mold. I'm like, they spend billions of dollars on trying to cure cancer, and you're telling me that it's in this mold? So I kind of just left it at that. At the same time, the voice told me that the cure for the energy problem was salt. And again, I thought, you can't put salt in your engine and burn it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I always remembered these. So by the time I turned about 16 or 17, I was saved 3 times. And these were angel hits, where some power shifted time or got in the middle of me and the accident. I used to do lost wax castings, and I had just cast a nativity scene. Ironically, the Christ child turned out to be the same bronze that Leonardo used for his telescope. It was clear, almost like silver, when it came out. The Christ child did. So I was sandblasting them for Christmas, and because we had a sandblaster, and when you do a plaster casting, there's a thick film of crap that forms around it, and you have to chip it off with either dental tools or a wire wheel. The easiest way to take it off is with a sandblaster. So since I had access to the school, because I was a teacher's aide, I went over, and the sandblaster was a little box thing with a glass window, and you stuck your gloves in there, and then you sandblasted. So I put all my gear in there, and they had these pull down cords to plug in. So I pulled down the cord as I usually did, and at my face level, I plugged it in, and bam! If you know what an arc welding arc is, that's what happened in front of my face. Flames went all over the place, blue light, intense blue light, and nothing. I mean, it burned the whole end of a rubber cord. There was no marks on me. There was nothing. I didn't burn my face. It would have blinded me for life. Number one hit that somebody took for me. Number two, I grew up. I went to Carmel High School, and in Carmel High School they had these. It was post Adobe, and they had these Adobe block pillars, and then they had Carmel stone seats where you could sit. So I was sitting there waiting for the bus, reading, or just sitting there, and there was a man with a reel mower that wasn't paying attention, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there and I could feel this thing go right by my eye, It was like he had picked up a little stone, like a 22 bullet. It went in and it dented, chipped a piece of the adobe column behind me. Hit number 2. I'm like, God, what's going on here? All in the same year, all in the same time period. Hit number 3. I had to walk home a long distance to go home, like when you said you walked a mile to get to your house from school. Well, this is true. I walked a mile from where the bus let me off. The bus let me off. I walked. Robinson Canyon was a big, long place, and in 1969 they replaced the bridge from a flood. So there's this big, tall, sweeping cement bridge. So I got to the bridge, and I looked over the side of the river, and I saw a water turtle. Now, I'd been on the river for about 4 years, up and down. I never saw a water turtle. And I'm like, should I go down and get it? What should I do? No, I just looked at it and thought, no, I don't want to get my clothes all muddy and everything. Because this thing's 20 feet down there. And so I started walking. Now, the way it was the bridge was an inside curve. So if you stayed on the side you were on, going the direction I was going, there were bushes and you could get hit by a car. So I walked over to the other side of the street, and on that side there was a road coming in called Holt Road, and I stepped out into the street, and this car just, I could feel it, and if I'd had my foot out at the direction I was going, it would have just broken in pieces, and I would have been limp for the rest of my life. And it was a stupid high school kid, I knew who it was, and he was making Google eyes at the girl that lived up on Holt Road, and he didn't see me. Gone. Now, at this point, I realized this was a third hit. An angel or whatever power, where they stopped time long enough for the car to go by. Now, this is what I did. I read somewhere that in Jewish tradition, if something is repeated 3 times, that gives it great emphasis. So I said, okay, God, I believed in God at that time, very heavily. I said, God, you saved me 3 times. That means you have a plan for my life. Now, what 17 or 16 years, 18-year-old, 17-year-old says that? But I did. And I said, I will do what it is that you set up for me to do. And so that was it. That was the promise. When I make a promise, I keep it. I'm good to my word most of the time when I can do it. And so time went on. One thing about making a deal with God is you should read the fine red print first. I did not. So time went on. The year 2004 came along, 20 years ago. A voice came to me. I had built a castle in California, probably the coolest house in the United States. It is still there and should be saved as a national monument. I didn't know it was designed after Frank Lloyd Wright. I didn't know it was sacred geometry. I didn't know it was designed after Ames. I did not know it was an astronomical observatory and castle. I used to do star watching out there. I had a tower on it and a sunroom. So I had a moon and a sunroom. So 2004, I was drawing up there because I'm an artist, and I was drawing the Carmel Mission. And a voice came to me and said specifically this: you need to find out who your family is and what they did. Now, since my family owned most of San Juan Bautista around the mission, and that's where they were from, turned out they would be San Carlos Borromeo relatives, descendants. I just made a little joke about, well, I go put my name in the registry, and oh, ha, ha, ha. Well, the voice wasn't very happy with me. And it said again, you have no idea who your family, very sternly, no idea who your family is and what they did. From that day on, I went to the library, I went all over, I went to San Juan Bautista. I started doing research, and I found out that my great-grandfather was born exactly 100 years to when I was. And he was a stagecoach driver, and he drove Concord stages because they were shipped out for the Overland Express and Wells Fargo. San Juan Bautista turned out to be a 7-stage stage stop. His father was a saloon owner and owned a bar. That same father died of diabetes really bad and blind and in a wheelchair. But I didn't know that until I started doing the research. Then I found out that my stagecoach brother's driver was a sheriff there. And I started doing all this research, and then I found out who my family was. Well, then the one world government attacked my castle through the the Naval Postgraduate School. I didn't know why. I do now. And so basically, we had to move from my castle. We were forced out. We were attacked two times, and lost everything. And then our stuff was supposed to be shipped out here, and the guy decided to steal it. I mean, it's just like nightmare, 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 nightmare. But it's a good thing that he stole it, because then I bought out a bookstore here. And so my daughter had moved to Boston, and so my wife wanted to be with my daughter. I had another daughter in Oregon, but she was already married. So we moved out here. Now, there's a house here, and it stood empty for 10 years. They tried to sell it. And it's an old house. It's a 1778 house. It's a Patriot's house. It also turned out it was the house of the seventh son of the seventh son, and he was a faith healer. And he could put his hands on people, and they would walk away healed and from the king's evil.